Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar using GeoWorx Sync with the utility network for ArcGIS. My name is Lindsay and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the Q&A feature in WebEx to submit your questions. Please direct your questions to the host. We will have a few minutes following the presentation to answer these questions. We'll answer as many as we can, and for those that we don't get to, we'll follow up after the webinar. Also, we'll be recording the webinar today, so you'll receive a recording of the webinar in a few days. Joining me on the call today, I have Skip Heiss, our President and CEO, who will be giving the presentation today, as well as Paige Drape, our Solutions Engineer, who will be providing our demo of GeoWorx Sync. And finally, we have Akshata Nayak on the call, who is our resident expert on the utility network. She's joining us to answer any technical questions that are asked throughout the webinar, so she'll be joining us later. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Skip to start the presentation.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Welcome, everyone. Today's agenda, we're going to go through a little bit about GeoWorx Sync and how it can help you with your UN transformation projects. It's a software platform that can help you with your integrations and your data migration, and we'll talk through that. And then most importantly, we're going to have a demonstration by Paige that will actually show you the technology and how it works. And then we'll have a brief question and answer session. So like Lindsay mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to submit those through the WebEx session. So what is GeoWorx Sync? GeoWorx Sync is it's a tool. It's a software platform that can help you in your UN transformation projects in three specific areas. One area is that it's a productized integration tool. So it can help you integrate third-party systems with your GIS through a productized approach. So think of this, if you have legacy integrations that you're worried about what to do with when you move to the UN, this is a tool that can help replace those without rebuilding those integrations, right? The second area is it can help you synchronize your data between your existing geometric network geodatabase and your target utility network geodatabase. This is kind of a real neat area because it allows you to migrate at your own pace. In other words, you can migrate certain data sets, maybe certain applications over to the UN while keeping synchronized with your existing geometric network that may be there to support legacy applications or legacy users. So incremental migration, we feel that will help reduce the impact, the overall impact on your organization as you transition. And then it's a product, right? So it can scale with your organization. You can easily add new integrations without building those to new systems and tie those into your utility network. So this webinar has a lot of different types of folks that have joined us, right? So it's a very popular webinar. This is, one of our highest registrations in terms of the attendance for our webinars compared to past. 67% of you are what I would call end users or organizations that use GIS that may be thinking about your migration to the UN. Maybe you've gone through some pilots, but you're the ones that are using the technology. So we want to certainly provide a message to you. But there's also a big segment of you, about a third of you are what I would phrase as partners or software consultants, software vendors, maybe system implementers or system integrators that help organizations through their migration. And then we do have folks that are attending this from across the globe. We have a few registrants from Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and of course most of you are from the United States. So our message is catered to both of these segments. So I think it's important to point out at this time that GeoNexus and we offer a tool to help facilitate your UN transformation, right? There's a lot that goes into this. there's requirements, there's design, there's testing, there's impacts to your business processes. We're not necessarily tied into all those different phases, but we have a tool, since we're a technology company, that can help, I think, in your data migration and integration areas. That being said, Esri has a utility network specialty, and there's a whole bunch of companies, some of which are on this webinar, that can help you through the whole transition, through your whole transformation, right? So I do want to point out that, this specific technology really helps facilitate these two areas of data migration and integration. So that being said, the current state you have is you have a geometric network. Maybe you're using ArcGIS 10.2 or 10.6, ArcMap, ArcCalog, maybe you have ArcSM. You have certainly data editors that are responsible for maintaining your geometric network. You might have mobile applications that allow you to take that data in the field for data collection, data assessment, field force automation, and you may have desktop applications for analytics, analysis, and map making. All of those applications and users are tied into your geometric network. You may have integrations to third-party systems, work and asset management systems, customer information systems. Maybe these integrations are custom-built, and your enterprise relies on this information from the utility network. And so as you think about moving to your future state, which is the utility network, you have to think about, okay, how do I move all those users over to using the utility network? When do I start my editing of that? When do I switch over my mobile apps, my desktop apps? But then more critically is these integrations, right? So do I have to rebuild these integrations? I have a heavy reliance on these integrations. How do I transition? Can I do it gradually, and so forth? So there's a lot of strategy that goes into that. And what we have here is a tool, I think, that considers both of those issues in terms of data migration and integration with GeoWorx Sync. So these are the two areas that I think we can help. So if you look at GeoWorx Sync as a product, right, or a platform, we have connectors that allow it to connect from the geometric network to a variety of third-party enterprise business systems through productized connectors. We also allow you to synchronize two geodatabases together, right? And so using our geodatabase to geodatabase connectors, we can now synchronize your geometric network and your utility network. And that allows you to transition gradually as you migrate to the utility network. So in other words, you may have some integrations that stay on the utility network or the geometric network for quite some time, and then you can, as you need to, graduate those over to the utility network by simply just taking advantage of our utility network connector at that point in time. We recently spoke with a utility that has a third-party vendor with a solution built on the geometric network, and that specific vendor is not going to migrate to the utility network anytime soon. It's not in their roadmap, right? And so rather than having this utility hamstrung to that timeline, they want to get going and migrate to the utility network. So through a tool like this, they'll be able to do that, and as well as keep that geometric network synchronized to support that third-party application. So GeoWorx Sync is a data integration platform. It's made up of three components. We have the GeoWorx Sync graphical user interface. This is where you would configure the system. It's easy to use. It's form-driven, drop-down menus, and so forth. That's where you set up your configuration rules, your data mappings. And then the GeoWorx Sync engine is where the actual work is performed. It reads the config file, and it performs the comparison of your data stores. It synchronizes. It does any kind of data transformation that it may need to do along the way. And you can schedule this or run it on demand. And then the engine utilizes what we have as a library of productized connectors. So you can take advantage of one or more connectors that you license. You may have an Esri connector, and you may just use this for utility network to geometric network synchronization. But if you happen to have some of these other third-party systems like IBM Maximo or SAP, then you can take advantage of those connectors and connect those systems into the equation as well. And you can scale this over time. We're constantly adding new connectors, so if you have systems that aren't listed here, we'd be interested in chatting with you about that, and that's how we continue to grow our library, as we look for systems that we don't currently support, and we build connectors for them. We also have plans to build an SDK to allow you to build your own connectors. So there may be some legacy systems that that GeoNexus wouldn't productize, but that you want to build a connector to support that system. So that will be coming as well. Just a little bit about the ease of use. Again, it's a full product. It has a nice graphical user interface that you'll see in the demonstration. There's no coding to make this happen. There's no scripting. You can easily and clearly document your configuration rules and your data synchronization, your mapping. It's easy to add new data sets. So over time, you may add new data that you want to synchronize. It's easy to do that. And it's loosely coupled. You can install the software on any server on your network and make connections simply through the API to make connections to those systems. This is a screenshot of our GIS connector. We have a number of options, right? So we started off in our traditional geodatabase connection that you see here in the lower right. Allows you to connect to a geodatabase instance through SDE. That's the traditional connection like you find in your ArcMap or ArcCatalog connection files. But we also offer other options such as connecting to services through ArcGIS Online, making an ArcGIS server connection, and then our most recent option is the ArcGIS portal connection. And so we'll take advantage of all of those connection options. Comprehensive reporting. So GeoWorx Sync, when it runs, it creates a XML file as well as a PDF report. And the PDF report is going to show you what it did, what information it created. Maybe it updated some attributes. Maybe it discovered some discrepancies in your data. Maybe some orphan records. Whatever it finds, it's going to report that out in a XML and PDF report so that you can take further action. We have some organizations that use this as simply a data integrity health check so that they can connect their various systems and look at the discrepancies or the gap between the data across those systems and then take action on that. And then the system can scale. Maybe you start off using it within your GIS department only, and you're synchronizing your geodatabases, but then down the road you may want to tie in perhaps a work and asset management system or a customer information system. All you do is take advantage of our connectors for those systems and then perform your data mapping. So an example is you may have a meter. That meter might have a home in your customer information and billing system because the meter belongs at a premise, at an address. You have a reading to bill that customer for usage. That meter may also have a home in your asset management system because it's a fixed asset that you have to account for and maintain in your organization and maybe have inventory for. Well, that meter also has a location and a spot in your GIS system for connectivity and for tracing and for identifying customers that are out of service based on an outage. So when you have data across multiple systems, you need a way to synchronize that. So that this system, this platform can scale to support one or more of these integration points. So a little bit about GeoNexus. Our mission at GeoNexus, number one, we're a software company, a software platform company, right? And so we're 100% focused on building a platform for system integration that's fully supported and ensures integrity of your data. So what does that mean, right? So we feel that custom integrations or homegrown connections, if they can introduce complexity to your organization. You have to maintain them. You have to rebuild them when you upgrade your systems. They can introduce data integrity issues. So what we're offering is a platform that's fully supported and maintained by our company that has productized connectors that allows you to connect these systems in a loosely coupled manner, and ensures most importantly, ensures that integrity of that data across your enterprise. We were 10 years old. We just had our 10-year anniversary recently. We have about 18 employees. We're growing. We're adding, a few more employees. We have open requisitions right now for some new hires. We're growing our customer base. We have over 50 licensed customers on our GeoWorx platform, and that's constantly growing. And the founders of the company, principals in the company, have over 25 years of experience in GIS, work and asset management, and integration. Just a map of our licensed customers globally. So by far, most of them obviously are in the United States and North America, but we do have a growing presence in Australia as well as the Middle East. And we have a growing partner ecosystem. We have 3 different categories of partners. All of the companies that we build connectors for, we have technology partnerships established so that we can build against their technology. We can get pre-releases. We can do our testing. We fully support those systems. Then we have, we're starting to build a reseller channel, a network of resellers. We signed our first official reseller with Esri Australia, so they can resell our technology and support it in that country. We're looking to grow resellers in other regions of the globe. And then we're also growing a consulting partner. We have a number of kind of unofficial partners today, but we are looking to formalize that, and we have one formal consulting partner with K&A that supports our clients in the Middle East. So please contact us if you're interested in becoming a formal partner with GeoNexus. So next we'll turn it over to Paige to do a technology demonstration. So we'll actually show you how this technology works, right? And we come up with 3 scenarios that we want to demonstrate today. The first scenario is we're going to use our Maximo connector between a geometric network geodatabase and Maximo, and we're going to load polls from the geometric network and create new assets in Maximo using that connector. And then the second scenario will be taking those polls and loading those into the UN, right? So migrating the polls to the UN. And then the third scenario is we're going to make an edit in the UN and synchronize those edits back to Maximo and back to the geometric network. So those are the 3 scenarios that Paige will walk through today. Before we turn it over to Paige, I just want to highlight a few areas that you'll see on the screen. One of the areas is the connections, right? So GeoWorx Sync needs to make connections to the data stores that you're synchronizing. So we'll have electric utility network connection, and then we'll have a connection to the geometric network. So Paige will talk about those 2 connections. And then we have a third connection to our Maximo. So now that we have all 3 of those connections established, we can go through and set up our data sets for polls and do the data mapping between those systems. And Paige will walk through the data mapping and synchronization rules. Because we synchronize 2 geodatabases, in this version of GeoWorx Sync, we've named those 2 versions GIS Publish and GIS Edit. So we're synchronizing between the GIS Publish and the GIS Edit geodatabase. For all practical purposes, the GIS Publish is the utility network and the Edit is the geometric network. So Paige will kind of clarify that as she goes through. But when she talks about Publish to Edit, Edit to Publish, we're really talking about synchronizing the utility network geodatabase to the geometric geodatabase and vice versa. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paige to actually go through the demonstration.
Okay, thank you, Skip. Okay, everyone, so as you can see, we are currently in ArcPro, and we're looking at a neighborhood that has just recently had wooden poles installed. And we can see by these wooden poles facility ID that they begin with NN for new neighborhood. And today we just want to take all of these new poles and, as Skip has previously said, we'll upload those into Maximo and the utility network and see how those three systems all interact with each other. So with that, we can now go to the GeoWorx Sync GUI. So this is what the GUI looks like when you open it up, and the first thing you'll notice is this Start-Stop Synchronizer button. So we'll actually go ahead and start the synchronization right now. And now we can go into the configuration. So what's great about the synchronization is that while we just manually started it, you can also run it on a task scheduler, meaning if you want to run it nightly, weekly, bi-weekly, you can set it to run like that, and once it's configured, you don't have to go into the GUI and it'll run every time. And we do know that GeoWorx Sync, when it finishes running, does also create that PDF report with all of the changes that were made and also does a data integrity check. So if you go into the email notification setting, you can add in your email here, and then every time GeoWorx Sync runs, it will actually email you that PDF report, meaning that if GeoWorx Sync is configured, you have it on a task scheduler, and your email is here, you never actually have to go into the GUI to make any changes. You can be completely hands-off with the tool and allow it to do all of the heavy lifting while still knowing all the changes that it's making and still knowing that it is running on a schedule. So the next area we're going to look at is this validate configuration. As you can see, I did previously validate this configuration, and we have no error messages, but we do have a warning that this data set is disabled, which we do want disabled right now. Validate configuration is really used as a precursor to running to make sure that all of your data sets and all of your configurations are set up correctly and there are no egregious errors. We take data integrity very seriously here, so we do have a lot of ways that you can check that all of your data is correct before you actually pull that trigger and either migrate it or integrate it. So we will now look at the GIS connections. You'll see that we have the electric utility network for UN and electric geometric network for GN. So first we'll look at the electric utility network. Right now our electric utility network is set up through the ArcGIS portal, and in order for that to work you need the portal name, the URL, the user, and the password. Although you can also connect to the utility network using the ArcGIS online connection with the REST services. So next we can look at the electric geometric network. So this is the geodatabase connection. For those of you that are current Sync users, I'm sure you've seen this configuration many times, but in order to connect to a geodatabase, you need the server, the instance, the database name, and then the user and the password. And you will notice right here as well that we do have the version of this geodatabase, and you can write to multiple versions, meaning that if you have a child geodatabase or a parent geodatabase, you can choose which one to write to, or if you want a separate version of that geodatabase just for GeoWorx Sync to write to, you can also do that. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with which version of a geodatabase you want to connect to. So next up, we can go ahead and look at our first data set, which is poles with the traditional geometric network connection being synced with Maximo. We are using Maximo in this demonstration, although we do support multiple different enterprise asset management systems. So we'll go ahead first and look at this GIS data source. Because it's the geometric network, our connection name will be the electric geometric network. After that, in order to connect, you need the database, the owner, the table, and the GIS unique ID field, which here is facility ID or any of those values that begin with NN for new neighborhood. And you can see that we do have a where clause for this NN new neighborhood poles, because those are the only ones that we want to sync right now. We are incrementally syncing our data. We aren't doing a mass migration. So because of that, we do have a where clause for the NN new neighborhood poles. So next we can look at our Maximo data source. Again, the connection name here will be Maximo. And then after that, you need the organization ID, the site ID, the classification ID, the Maximo key field, and the GIS foreign key field. And the Maximo key field and GIS foreign key field are equivalent fields. These are all of those values that begin with NN, and they will be the same between the two systems. And this is actually how GeoWorx Sync knows to go into an individual record and make changes in the assets and specifications. GeoWorx Sync will recognize that the facility ID and the asset num are the same, and then be able to go in and make record-by-record changes. So next up, we can look at the synchronization rules. And this is how we know what data is getting pushed from GIS to Maximo. So as you can see here, for not even really knowing a lot about the GeoWorx Sync GUI, it is relatively easy to understand how your data will be pushed. For instance, right here we have a GIS field, and the value of that GIS field is material. That's being mapped to an asset specification in Maximo called material type. Additionally, the GIS field height is being mapped to the asset specification height in Maximo. So it's a very straightforward way to be able to see exactly how your data will be integrated. And we do both GIS to Maximo create and modify. Additionally, we are completely bidirectional, meaning that you can make changes in Maximo and have those reflected as well. So we currently are not creating any records in Maximo, but we are modifying records. So under this Maximo record modify tab from Maximo to GIS, we can see that any changes for comments in Maximo will be pushed back to comments in GIS. Similarly, any changes for the manufacturer type will be pushed back to GIS. So with that, now we can look at our second data set as well, which is our second scenario of data migration from the geometric network to the utility network. So we'll go ahead and open up this data set. The first thing to notice is that we have no Maximo data source here, so you do not need an asset management system in order to push between the geometric network and the utility network. But we do have the geometric network and utility network configured here. So here is our utility network. And we can see that after you assign the connection name for the utility network, you have your service, layer, and here is where we have our version. Unlike with the geometric network, where the version was under the GIS connections, you now connect to the version after the layer. And then you'll also see that we have this new asset group and asset type. These two don't exist in the geometric network. They are unique to the utility network, but GeoWorx Sync is smart enough to know to bring in this data for all these different subtype fields, and you are able to directly populate this in GeoWorx Sync, meaning that you won't have to go into the utility network and manually populate this. GeoWorx Sync will take care of that extra step for you. And again, we can see that we have our unique GIS field, and it's still that NN for new neighborhood polls. So we can go ahead and look at the data that we are pushing from, which is the geometric network. And this looks the exact same as it did when we were pushing to Maximo. So again, we have that electric geometric network, the database, the owner, the table, and our NN facility ID. And then we can look at our rules for how we are pushing data. So this looks very similar when we're like how we're pushing from GIS to Maximo, but now we're pushing from the geometric network to the utility network. So as such, we have our GIS field, the first field comments coming from the geometric network being pushed to the utility network attribute notes. Again, material will be pushed to material. So it is a straightforward way to be able to see exactly how your data is being integrated between these two systems. So with that, we can go ahead and look at the front of the console and see that those polls, 119 of them that began with NN for new neighborhood, were generated in both Maximo and GIS and the utility network. So the first thing we'll do is refresh this data, and we'll just close out and reopen up ArcMap. And in the meantime for that, we can actually go into Maximo and see all of those changes made. So I am using the same login that we used in GeoWorx Sync, but any login you have for Maximo works still to see all these changes. So we'll go ahead and go to Assets, and we'll pull up all of these NN polls. And there we go. We can see that all 119 of them are populated in Maximo now, which is great and exactly what we wanted to see. So we can go ahead and minimize that, and we'll open back up the ArcGIS map, and then we'll go ahead and see all of these polls now populated in the utility network as well. And I do want to make note that we'll also see asset group populated with electric support pole, as we wanted to see and as GeoWorx Sync was actually able to push into the utility network. So we'll go ahead and just give the utility network a moment to open up, and you can see we are switching over to this utility network map now as well. And once this data loads, we'll also see a ribbon up here that says utility network, so we know that we are in the utility network. Yep, and there we go. So let's go down to structure junction, which is where our electric support poles will now be hosted, and we can open up that attribute table. And there we go. We can see all of our NN polls are now in the utility network. So while we're in here, we'll actually go ahead and just make a note in one of these saying that they're now pushed to the utility network. So we'll go ahead over to Edit, Modify, and just make a change for one of them, saying UN Migration. And then we can save this change. And we'll close out the map. Now if we go back into the configuration, we can disable this first data set since we no longer need it, and we'll enable this last data set, which is the utility network synced with Maximo. And now we can go ahead and start the synchronizer for this as well. And now let's go ahead and look at this poll's utility network to Maximo configuration as well. Again, we are using Maximo, but any asset management system that we support can be used with this. So we again see the electric utility network connection, where we still have that service, the layer, the version, the asset group, electric support poll, and the GIS unique ID field, which is those NN new neighborhood polls. And then we can look at our Maximo connection as well. This is the exact same as we had it in the polls for the geometric network to Maximo, and our connection again is not going to break between this system. So we can see it's the Maximo connection name, along with the organization ID, the site ID, the classification ID, the Maximo key field, and that equivalent GIS foreign key field. And we'll go ahead and look at these synchronization rules as well, and we can see that they are the same. So again, material in the utility network will be mapped to material type in Maximo. Notes will be mapped to comments in Maximo. And again, here we can create, we can modify data, and we can also still push from Maximo to the utility network as well. Here we just have it enabled for comments and notes. So now we'll go ahead to the console and see if that's finished running, and it has. And we can see that we have one update in both systems. So now let's go ahead and look at that PDF report of these. Let me just make this a little bigger. And you can see that we do have different parts bookmarked up here. So if we look at this final status report, it is exactly what we saw on that console as well. If we had any errors, they would be highlighted in red here, and you could also look at them under the errors tab. We don't have any. Similarly with any orphans, any links, any creates, or updates. And updates right now we do have. So we can go ahead and we'll actually go look at this update in Maximo to see how it's been reflected within the system. Although it has changed both in Maximo and in the geometric network, they will now both have this new note. So we can go ahead into Maximo, and we'll type in this asset number, and we can see that UN migration have been added to the node, which is exactly what we wanted to see. And we also saw that there was no breaking between the integration types. As soon as the data was in both the utility network and the asset management system, we were still able to integrate between the two seamlessly. So if we look at the specifications, yep, there's our comment, UN migration. And we do also support network connectivity in the utility network to Maximo as well, although that's not in this demonstration. We do have a prior webinar on that we can send out as well. So with that, I will now pass it back to Skip.
Great. Thank you, Paige. At this point, what we'd like to do is kind of summarize what you saw. So we showed how GeoWorx Sync as a platform can be used to connect to a third-party system like the Maximo system and load and synchronize data between the utility network or the geometric network and Maximo. But then it can also be used to support the migration to the utility network, right? So Paige showed the scenario number 2 where those polls were then loaded and synchronized with the utility network. And then the third phase, Paige made that little update to the comments field in the utility network and saved that, and then that synchronized back to both the Maximo instance and the geometric network instance. And so what we think that this can do is really help as a tool in your utility network migration or utility network transformation projects by offering a tool so you're not necessarily rebuilding those integrations, but now inserting a productized platform to integrate those systems with fully supported connectors Also, I think an advantage of this is it'll allow you to migrate to the utility network at your own pace over time, right? Rather than a big bang, which may be necessary to support existing users or existing third-party systems that are heavily tied to the geometric network, but still allow you to get to the utility network with some of your users and your editors, and then switch the others over as you see fit, and minimizing the impact on your existing business side and processes, right? And then the third thing is the scalability, right? So you may start off small and synchronizing your GIS to GIS, but then you might want to tie in a work management system or a customer information system through a productized connector. So this lets you scale in time. We've had a lot of users that use it between work management and GIS, and they've been there for many years, but now they're saying, hey, we can take advantage of your CIS connector and tie in our CIS system. So then they have these three systems synchronizing the data, and then a fourth system may come into play. So this is a platform that can scale with your enterprise. So with that, right, we want to kind of move into questions and answers. And if some of you have had a chance to submit some questions, I'll turn it over to Lindsay, and she can help facilitate the Q&A period.
All right, thank you, Skip and Paige. We did have a few questions come through during the presentation, so I'm bringing them in now. Okay, so the first question is, do you handle associations? Akshata, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, we do handle associations. Those of you who know GeoWorx Sync, we had something like a relationship tab. We have a similar tab for associations. So you could bring in any of your associations like attachments, connectivity, containments. So one of the examples would be if you want the location of the transformer, you could get that location populated from the respective transformer bank through the connectivity. So we do support associations.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how does the GN to UN sync handle connected assets in the GN, such as fuse, switches, and cables? Are there additional tasks to validate the topology and or update subnetworks in the UN?
So as of now, we move the data from GN to UN. So whatever data is available in the geometric network, we can map them to the utility network. And if you have any other fields in your databases that you can connect to, you can bring them over. Or if you know any of those values that you want to populate, you could use a feature like default values that could populate a particular field into that attribute, or you could also manipulate some of the fields using our value list to move between the domains, or to do small conversions, or also could leverage our calculated values, but we do not run any post-processing. We map the values from geometric network to utility network.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, do you have connectors to Small World and SAP HANA from Esri UN UPDM?
We do not have a connector to Small World. We have a connector to SAP. We do have an SAP connector, and it works with HANA. So we'd be happy to talk to you more about our SAP solution if you contact us directly.
Okay, another question. Are the GeoSync connectors custom built for each enterprise synchronization process? For example, the connector between the UN and SAP. Akshata, do you want to take that question?
No. So our UN module is in the HRE module. So it's a part of GIS adapter. So it comes in all the flavors as of now. So all the 2.4 versions of GeoWorx Sync would have the UN capability. So you could use it along with an EAM like SAP, or you could just use the GIS adapter to move from geometric network to utility network. You need not have to build it separately. It comes along with the build.
And then can you insert a predefined maximal location hierarchy?
So by predefined, if you have a hierarchy in Maximo, you could definitely bring it over in like if you mean like a hierarchy of poles, transformer banks and transformer, or pad, transformer bank and transformer, you can definitely bring it over to the utility network.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages of GeoWorx Sync, at least with our experience tying it into EAM systems. We can actually set up the hierarchy and create that hierarchy in Maximo and keep that, or the EAM system in general, and keep that aligned. We have what we call linking, and we can talk more about this if you contact us, but we do have linking functionality which supports maintaining that hierarchy in Maximo and GIS, so that if for example, if a transformer is an asset in EAM and the transformer blows up, you know, the new transformer gets placed at that same location, right? And so GeoWorx Sync can then tell GIS what is the most current transformer asset at that location at that given time. So we handle the synchronization of that asset swap out, if you will, between the EAM and the GIS system, so that both of those are synchronized. And again, it's a topic that we can certainly talk more about if you contact us.
Okay, the next question is, do you have a connector to Cityworks?
So we have a connector to GIS, right? So we can talk to all the GIS tables, and if you register a database table with GIS, we can certainly synchronize with that. So any GIS tables that are registered, either spatial or non-spatial, we can connect to and synchronize with. That being said, we do have plans to build what we call a generic RDBMS connector, and that will allow you to connect to generic tables within any system and synchronize those. So again, we'd be happy to talk to you about how this technology can support Cityworks.
Okay, and we'll do one more question. The question is, do you use auto-generated unique IDs from the GIS database or any user-defined ID?
The answer to that is yes. We can, we have key generation where we can generate unique IDs in GeoWorx Sync, or we can turn that off and allow you to use any field in your GIS that has unique IDs generated. So if you want to use an auto updater or a custom unique ID generator, you can go ahead and use that, and we'll take advantage of that. If you don't have a way of doing that, then you can turn our key generation capability on, in which case we'll generate unique keys and keep those two systems synchronized. I'm sorry, Akshata, if you were going to chime in, you can feel free to do so at this time.
No, I was going to say the same, so thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, it looks like we have time for one more question, so this will be the last one. How are the connectors and integration components kept up to date with all the version changes in the enterprise systems? Akshata, do you want to take that one?
So as Skip earlier mentioned, we are partners with most of our connector vendors. So we usually have a GeoWorx Sync version that supports the current version, or we usually have that are ready for the pre-releases. So we always have something ready before you move. So it's completely supported.
All right. Thank you very much, Akshata. So we're out of time here, but I want to thank you all again for joining us today and remind you that any of the questions that we answered will follow up afterwards with the answers for you and any that we didn't get to as well. And if you have any questions beyond that, please contact us at info@geonexus.com and have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.